So welcome in, everybody, to the Fully Inflated Football live podcast here on YouTube. And if you're listening to this back in the audio version, thank you for joining us here as well. This is going to be a special podcast, mailbag edition of the podcast. I've been kind of letting you guys know in different platforms that the next couple weeks on the channel and with this podcast, of course, is going to look a lot different because I'm getting married next week. Shout out to Lisa B. She's in the chat. Everyone, go shout her out if you're live here in the chat. But I'm getting married next Saturday, and then we're going to be out of town with the honeymoon, and then we hit Christmas. So it's just going to be a crazy 2 to 3 week stretch, which means content's going to look a little different here. Should still have power rankings next week, and then we'll have a week off of power rankings. And then I'm recording 2 film specials on 2 players that have kind of headlined this season. I'm going to make those kind of, mystical as far as what players those are going to be. But I think I'm planning those for each Wednesday throughout the next couple of weeks. And then I'm also going to be kicking off draft season here on That Franchise Guy with my first mock draft coming. Mock draft Monday, which will be the 21st, if my math is the 20th, if my math is correct there. So we're going to have mock draft, film stuff. And it'll be an interesting transition as we approach playoffs and stuff. So just some housekeeping there. I also might as well remind you guys, this podcast, my channel, is brought to you by my amazing supporters on Patreon. That is patreon.com/thatfranchiseguy, where you can not just support this podcast and my YouTube channel, but also get exclusive content as well. You'll get film breakdowns. We're going to be doing Trevor Lawrence here tomorrow. Take a little check-in on how he's playing. So you get film breakdowns. You get lots of mock draft, or just draft content in general. So exclusive stuff there on Patreon. And you'll be able to submit questions to this show. This is a Patreon mailbag extensive podcast ahead of us here. So if you want to support the show, support the channel, support me, patreon.com/thatfranchiseguy, and I appreciate you guys in advance. And then because this is a live podcast, for everybody dropping in these super chats, thank you so much for your support above all. But I will be answering any super chats as we go here because we're hopping right into the mailbag. So we're going to be doing our Patreon mailbag questions and answering any super chat questions you guys have. And we have our first super chat question is from Loomer Cooper. How's it going, Loomer? He asks if my fiance's favorite football player, Andy Dalton, is going to be there. I have not gotten a confirmation from Andy. We will be in Illinois. So if anybody knows Andy Dalton and wants to get him out to our wedding, it's the day before a game. I think they actually play on Monday night in Chicago. So maybe could make that work. But as of right now, no confirmation on Andy Dalton attending the wedding. But let's talk some ball here. Opening up the Patreon mailbag from also EM Baller. Thank you for the super chat. He says Taysom Hill is better. Sorry, Chris Sims says Taysom Hill is better than Tua. Chris Sims just getting ready for draft season, I guess. Got to get the hot takes going. What did he have? Who did he put ahead of Fields last year? The Texas A&M quarterback, Kellen Mond. He had Kellen Mond over Fields. He's got to get those hot takes rolling as we're nearing draft season, I guess. Okay, Patreon mailbag question from Matt Bramble. If Russell Wilson is not the QB next year with Seattle, who will be? Interesting note, Pete Carroll says he liked Sam Darnold in a press conference during the offseason, assuming Pete stays and Russell is gone. I think, wherever he go, like a good prediction would be wherever he goes that Seattle gets that quarterback in return. So two teams that come to my mind would be the Las Vegas Raiders and the New York Giants. So it could be Daniel Jones. It could be Derek Carr. If he goes to New Orleans, Jameis could maybe come to Seattle, but I don't see that happening. I would assume it's going to be some combination of them signing a free agent. Maybe Marcus Mariota comes back out to the Northwest, and then they draft a guy in the first or second first or second round. This is an interesting deep draft. I've gotten to kind of start to look at these guys a little bit. So I'm super stoked for draft season. But yeah, I think those are your two options. You either trade for the guy that he's headed to, be it Daniel Jones or Derek Carr, or you sign a vet and draft a young quarterback. Good question, though. I'm excited to see what happens with Russ. Josh Alstrom just did a super chat question. Am I ever going to join PFF full time? Well, I'm full time with YouTube right now. We're pretty much fully loaded here, putting out content. So I don't see going PFF full time anytime soon. But thank you for the question. Okay, from Tyler on Patreon. If you were drafting a QB in a blank slate rebuild, what positions would you invest in to support them? Think 3 to 4 noteworthy acquisitions through the draft and free agency. I would want at least 2. If I get 4 moves, I would say at least 2 of those would be offensive linemen, preferably either both tackles or a blindside tackle and a center. And then I want 1 or 2 playmaking weapons. I'm not so much worried about what my defense looks like. We can figure that out in time. I'm not so much worried about who my running back is. Can figure that out in time. I'd probably go 2 tackles, a center, and a number 1 wide receiver. If you can't get that third offensive lineman, I'd probably go with two linemen and then either 2 receivers or a receiver and a really explosive tight end. But yeah, I think supporting your young quarterback is got to be the priority when you invest in a young guy. From Mr. Irrelevant, we've got a complicated would you rather question. Would you rather have a team with top 5 talent at all less valuable positions like running back, interior offensive line, linebacker, safety, slot corner, and average talent elsewhere, aka the Indianapolis Colts, or B, a team with top 5 talent players at 3 of the most valuable positions, being quarterback, edge, corner, wide receiver, and average talent everywhere else. So it's either all of the lesser valuable positions have elite talent or just 3 of the most valuable positions. I think if you look at that what the real question here is would you rather be the Rams or the Colts is kind of the way I look at this question. And I think your answer is you'd rather be the Rams because having a quarterback, and Matthew Stafford isn't even an elite quarterback, but first of all, just having an elite quarterback is going to be the most advantageous thing you can do. So that's a little bit different for the Rams-Colts thing, but you get the point. Imagine the Rams with Aaron Rodgers or Patrick Mahomes, right? But outside of the quarterback, which is just the trump card, I think looking at that, Jalen Ramsey elevates everyone in the secondary, and especially Aaron Donald elevates everyone up front there. So if you get elite talent at those game-changing positions, you're going to be able to elevate those average players everywhere else. So I would rather have the second option there where you have 3 elite players at important positions as opposed to a bunch of elite players at non-important positions. From Nat, if guys like Xavier Howard and Trayvon Diggs could reliably get you 6+ interceptions per year, would you rather still have more lockdown corners like Jair and Ramsey? Also, have you considered including coaches and coordinators in studs and duds? I have not considered coaches and coordinators because I am fully maxed out with studs and duds. It's just, seriously, it takes me 2 whole work days to put that thing together. So I don't have any time to think about coaches and coordinators in there, unfortunately. But as for your original question, I would need to see what are their coverage numbers. Obviously it's nice to have interceptions, but there's just so much more to playing corner than those 6 plays where they got an interception, if that makes sense. Like, I guess your point is, like, if their ball skills are so truly unique that they always find ways to get 6 or 7 interceptions, I guess that's a little different than the way I was looking at it. But let's assume those guys still have average coverage numbers every year. I would still rather have the guy that's locked down. You know, you might not directly see turnovers that are being generated by a corner locking guys down, but if you're locking down the number 1 receiver consistently, that's probably buying more time for your pass rush to get home. That generates poor decisions thrown elsewhere. That generates strip sack, fumbles. I just think, focusing on interception numbers, but those are literally 6 or 7 snaps out of 1,000 coverage snaps, or 500 or 600 coverage snaps, because half of them are run defense snaps. But interceptions are great, but you want to look at the whole body of work, not just those 5 to 10 plays that happen to get intercepted. From Matthew Mills, love your channel. Thank you, Matt. I wonder what changes you would make to our team if you were the Steelers GM. Our defense, this is very fitting coming off of yesterday's embarrassing game. Our defense has seriously been lacking this past couple of few games. And besides quarterback and offensive line, what adjustments would you make in order to turn the Steelers into a Super Bowl team again? Hoping we can at least make the AFC Championship in a couple of years. Obviously quarterback is so important there, and it's tough. Like, you named it. That is what the Steelers' focus should be, is quarterback and offensive line. I don't think it's much more difficult than that. But if you need somewhere else to improve, I would say the secondary. Joe Hayden has been missing some time. He's getting up there in age. Steven Nelson's gone. Mike Hilton's gone. Like, that group of corners, Cam Sutton's solid, but they also have Justin Lane has not stepped up. They need more corners to round out that defense, because that front seven's not going anywhere. But I would say cornerback is also a significant need. I don't have any specific issue with the Steelers coaching or anything. Obviously, an offensive mind might do a better job with the offense, but there's only so much you can do when you don't have O-line play and quarterback play. All right, next question from Tanner. I was wondering if I had a P.O. box. The reason I don't know if that's... Well, I appreciate that, Tanner. I'll get back to you on Patreon. Sorry. I jumped the gun on that being a mailbag question. But we've got one from Jack here. How much of an update would this O-line lineup be for the Bears going forward versus what they currently have? Left tackle, Jason Peters. Left guard, Jenkins, being the rookie at Oklahoma State that they took. Center, Whitehair. Right guard, Daniels. Right tackle, Borum. Also, why is Sam Mustipher and Larry Borum graded out so bad? What are you seeing from them that can be reasons as to that? I don't think I would slide Jenkins into left guard and start Borum at right tackle. I would probably keep Mustipher at center, keep Daniels and Whitehair at guard where they're really comfortable. Neither of those guys have been very good at center. That's part of why Mustipher has been getting the hand there. And then I would just sit Borum, and maybe Borum becomes the long-term left tackle prospect behind Peters. But I would assuredly put Jenkins back at right tackle where he kicked ass at Oklahoma State and roll with the rest of the unit. And that's actually not a bad offensive line. I think getting those guys healthy is top 16 unit. It's certainly not a liability. It's something Fields can play behind. And as far as Mustafa and Borum grading out so bad, I'm not going to act like I'm in there charting every single Sam Mustafa or Larry Borum snap. But my guess would be that, well, in Borum's case, he just hasn't played a ton. So a few bad reps is going to make that grade come down. I think Borum's played, good for a 4th, 5th round rookie. And Sam Mustafa, I would just assume that because he is lighter, he's getting, some bad losses in pass protection. If he gets one-on-one against powerful players, he's going to give up his ground because he is a lighter, less experienced player. That's my assumption. Again, I'm not in there charting every play, so I can't tell you exactly why the grade is coming out the way they are, but I hope that answers your question. From Hawkboy, do you still have any faith in Carolina's front office after the horrendous decision to fire Joe Brady? I'm glad someone asked this. I figured this was coming. And no, I think I'm out. I think I'm out on Carolina. I'm sorry, Panthers fans, but it's been, starting with the offseason, with the just weird offensive line commitments to Elflein and those guys. Like, I felt like the draft pick of J.C. Horn was not what they needed. I thought Rashawn Slater would have been a slam dunk pick for them, and it absolutely would have been. And, they basically threw Sam Darnold to the Wolves, then they threw P.J. Walker to the Wolves, they threw Cam Newton to the Wolves, and then they said, oh, wait, no, this is Joe Brady's fault. You're out of here. Now, it also seems, not only is that bad process, but the alternative here is that Matt Rule had a budding of opinions with Joe Brady. I saw a report that Matt Rule wanted to run the ball 33 times a game. And Joe Brady, I'm assuming, as a modern thinking good mind, was like, no. Number one, it's just stupid to have that mentality of like, we have to run the ball 33 times today. No, you have to take into account game script and how game flow dictates how you play. You can't just come in and say, if we run the ball 33 times today, we're going to win. That's ridiculous coach speak nonsense from, the 20th century. There's just no room for that in modern football, and Joe Brady knows that. But just the philosophy in general, I think Joe Brady wants to pass the ball. And unfortunately, they didn't give him the pieces to do that. They didn't give him a quarterback that's consistent at running his scheme. They didn't give him an offensive line that can allow the quarterback to utilize the scheme. And hell, outside of DJ Moore, none of those receivers are playing well this year. Robbie Anderson's kind of been a waste of space for the Panthers. So for them to fire Joe Brady, whatever the reason is, whether it was difference of opinion or they actually thought he was a bad coordinator, it's just absurd. So when the Panthers hired David Tepper, my opinion on them was way up here. I really like the direction of that team. I think Tepper I still like David Tepper, but I'm questioning if he's got the right structure in place. And that comes back to Matt Rule. I don't know if I buy into that. It's just all incredibly eye-opening and very concerning. So I am very much out on the Panthers. They have a lot of proving to do, especially with basically everything related to the offense. From Jake, is it just me, or does it seem like Tyreek Hill doesn't have that great of hands? He seems to have passes bounce off his hands and have a few big drops each game. I have noticed Tyreek Hill is really struggling this year. Now, that's not really plagued him in the past. It could just be a really unfortunate stretch for Tyreek. He's not like this amazing contested catch guy. That's never been a huge part of his game. But let's check his drop record. So, yeah, oh my God, he has 9 drops this season. He had 13 drops last year. So he has been dropping the rock a lot. Leading up to that, though, the last, before 2020, pretty normal. 5 drops, 6 drops, 7 drops, 4 drops. Nothing significant when he's getting 65, 80, 90, 80 receptions. But yeah, I mean, that's officially in like concerning territory at this point. I mean, that's a PFF drop grade of 50 last year, 56 this year. That's very poor. And that is now 22 drops in his last 2 seasons. So that's very noteworthy, I would say, and is a knock on his game at this point. So, yeah, that's a good question. Absolutely. We got a super chat here from Riddle Me This. Would Russell Wilson be a good move for Denver? Yep, absolutely. I think there's a little bit of concern on Russ just with like the mental side of the game. I think he's been kind of processing a little slow this year, making some more questionable decisions. But I do think just a change of scenery could maybe get him back and refocus on what he does so well. And Denver, it's like, can you get Rodgers? Can you get Russell Wilson? Because if you can, there's really not a whole lot of other work to do roster-wise with the Denver Broncos. So, yeah, I'd be all in for Russ making that move. And Seattle would probably be willing to do it because it's sending him to the other conference. Okay, back to Patreon mailbag from the Dome Patrol. Can you please explain to me how, we got a Madden question here, how Zeke is still an X factor in Madden? The marketing. It's marketing. You know, he's been a X factor for them for a long time over a lot of much better running backs. So, yeah, it's, as with a lot of their stuff, marketing. Nicholas Craig, if the 2008 Detroit Lions and the 2017 Browns faced each other, who do you think would win? Both teams went 0-16. God, I would have to look back on the 2008 Lions, but just off of my theory that the more modern teams are better than old teams. Like if you're literally just ripping them out of 2008, throwing them on a football field and saying you're playing the 2017 Cleveland Browns, I would say the 2017 Cleveland Browns win because they're probably better passing the ball. They probably make smarter decisions. Just, I think teams are getting better and better and better in time. Athletes are better and better. So that's my only answer there. I wish I had a better recall on who the hell was on the 2008 Detroit Lions, because I honestly just don't. I was still in high school at the time, so I wasn't like as dialed in. Okay, from EM Baller, we got a super chat question here. Would Joe Brady be a good fit as OC in Miami? I like that fit. If they could get him some better blocking, I like that fit because Joe Brady's offense is, kind of has some New Orleans roots. Joe Brady, I'm like 99% sure, went from working for Sean Payton to the LSU job. And you can see it. He's got that kind of West Coast spread style, quick hitting passing game about him. He's not one of these Shanahan offenses where, he's only got 2 or 3 receivers running routes, play action, establishing pockets. Like he wants that quick distributor of a quarterback, and that's Tua, 100%. Hell, people have even compared Tua to Drew Brees. I wouldn't go that far, but I think, yeah, schematically speaking, you get plenty of receivers. You got to improve the O-line a little bit. Whoever your offensive coordinator is going to be there in Miami, but I think that would be a stellar hire for Miami and would be great for Joe Brady. I think that'd be great for Tua. It'd be great for just all of it. I really like that hire, so that's a good super chat suggestion there. Okay, we got a Patreon mailbag question from Luke. Am I crazy for arguing with people in defense of Joe Brady? I feel like he wasn't given a lot of talent to work with. We've been over that. Figured we'd get an abundance of Joe Brady questions here. That was very shocking news. But Panthers fans, just as most fan bases do, are going to go straight for the offensive coordinator's head whenever anything goes wrong. They are consistently the first scapegoat of any NFL team. Like I feel like a team could be losing games because of their defense, and they would still blame an offensive coordinator. From Will Smitty, which team so far has had the best 2021 draft class? I think it's hard to argue against what Miami did in the first round with Waddle, Phillips, and Javon Holland in the second round. Definitely difficult to argue against that. I think the Chargers was great at the time and has looked just as good. I mean, they got Rashawn Slater, has been literally Tristan Wirfs again, where a rookie comes in and plays like a top 10 tackle, this time at left, which is just mind-blowing. We've seen that twice in, 20 years, and it's been back-to-back years. So, Tristan Wirfs and Asante Samuel in the second round, they're definitely up there. I agree. Miami really killed it this year. I think, obviously Dallas getting Micah Parsons when they did is a steal. They traded down and then took him, really good execution. The Kansas City Chiefs, if you want to just look at value, the Kansas City Chiefs, chef's kiss. You get Creed Humphrey in the second round and Trey Smith in the sixth? What is that? That's nuts. So those are a few that come to my mind. Then we got Alex Viveros from Patreon asks, if the Lions traded Jared Goff in the offseason, are there teams that be a good fit for him? I honestly don't think another team is going to look at Jared Goff as a starter next year. I think he's kind of entered that, fringy, Jameis Winston, Mariota, that cluster. I don't think they would really get anything for him, especially on that contract. I think if the Lions wanted to move on from Jared Goff, I think it would be a release. And then you're talking about some of these situations, like you bring up the Steelers. I think that could theoretically be a good fit. You're looking at teams like the Steelers, the Saints, the Seahawks, if they trade Russ, as that bridge starter quarterback that just kind of, takes hits while you develop someone else. I just don't see Jared Goff until he proves that he's, can get back to a higher level. I don't see another team viewing him that way. Sick Nick asks on the super chat, what position is harder, left tackle or right tackle? QB right hand? I'm sorry, I don't understand your question. Thank you for the super chat, but I don't think left tackle or right tackle is by nature harder. I think depends on your build, your coordination. If you're right hand to left hand, makes a difference. Right tackles actually tend to see, on average, better pass rushers. For a lot of teams have their Bosas, their Watts are going to be left defensive ends because offenses are setting their best offensive tackle to be on the other side because that is often the quarterback's blind side. So right tackle, in theory, over time would be more difficult because you're probably seeing better opposition, but I think it really just comes down to what hand is more comfortable for you. Patrick Hill asks, is Taylor Heineke the second best quarterback in the NFC East? Oof. That's tough. I mean, I don't, oh man. I don't think he's better than Daniel Jones. I really don't. He's not that far behind. I just think Daniel Jones is much more accurate. He's better at processing defenses, getting the ball out. You got to keep in mind Daniel Jones has no offensive line. Taylor Heineke does. I think Taylor Heineke has a much easier situation in Washington than Daniel Jones does for the Giants. So I don't think he's better than Daniel Jones. He's probably currently playing better than Daniel Jones, though. And then Jalen Hurts is iffy. I mean, Jalen Hurts some weeks looks really good, and other weeks, you can't hit the broadside of a barn. I also am not fully confident that he's better than Gardner Minshew. So those guys are all kind of tight, but I'm not ready to say Heineke is the second best quarterback in the NFC East, though I've been impressed with him the last month of the season. He's settling in. He looks good. I'm excited to keep watching him for the rest of the year at least. All right, Otter asks, okay, that's not a mailbag question. Sorry, guys. Jake asks, for the past 4 weeks after the Chiefs get through their scripted plays of offense, they fall apart. I agree. I know there's blame all around, but how do you see them turning things around? I think at this point in the season, you're probably not realistically getting 2019, 2020 Kansas City Chiefs offense on the field. That doesn't mean they can't win a Super Bowl, but I think there's clearly a lack of identity on that offense. Now, they can get more consistent. You mentioned drops here. You mentioned just Pat making stupid mistakes. Like, there's things when it relates to dropping footballs and the turnover-worthy play stuff that they can see certain jumps in their consistency. But I think there is an element of, like, they don't have a number 2 option as a receiver. They obviously have Kelsey and Hill. I think you had a little bit of more of that in years past. Mecole Hardman has really not stepped up. I think it's a bit of it. It's just a rhythm, confidence thing as well, a morale thing. Like I think they're missing a little bit of an identity that they haven't had in years past. It's very difficult to like pinpoint what that is, but it's just clear they don't have that same it factor, and I don't think they're going to get it this year. But you can see some incremental improvements on offense. Their defense is very clearly settled in, and in the current structure of the AFC, they can still absolutely win that, and then take a better look in the mirror in the offseason with more time to evaluate what it is specifically that they need to run more of this or do more of that, From Jakar, a couple of mailbag questions from the Patreon. Is Cooper Kupp officially a top 10 receiver? I don't think there's many good arguments against that. He just does things a little differently, right? Like, he's not an outside player, as with a lot of player comparisons. It's tough. He's not as good. He's not a top 10 receiver as a deep threat, which is a more valuable way to play receiver. But I mean, he is the best slot receiver in the NFL, and he's not just a typical slot. Like, he's not a traditional deep threat, but he creates explosive plays on crossing routes up the seam. He's very effective. His hands are about as good as they get. His run after catch is exceptional. I think it's pretty difficult to argue that Cooper Kupp is anything less than a top 10 receiver right now. And then number 2, has Belichick surpassed LaFleur and or Kingsbury for Coach of the Year? Yeah, I'll give my vote to Belichick. I've always believed Bill Belichick deserves more Coach of the Years, and it's not just Coach of the Year, it's like Executive of the Year plus Coach of the Year, because he had the foresight of, like, I need Matt Judon, I need to keep J.C. Jackson here, Gilmore could take or leave, just all of the different stuff he did, all the different pieces he's moved around, got Christian Barmore in the draft, the whole development of Kyle Duggar back there, like, that's all been beautiful. And then offensively, they put that stuff together too to have a very serviceable offense. Mac Jones, rookie quarterback, like, yeah, I will give my vote for Coach of the Year to Bill Belichick, 100%. From Snapshot on Patreon, with some second-year corners taking leaps in their development this year, rank the top 3 second-year corners that you think have developed well this year. So A.J. Terrell is the first guy that comes to my mind. He's been lights out. That's been really fun. He's been a better corner than Trayvon Diggs. He's been actually a lot better than Trayvon Diggs. But you do got to include Trayvon Diggs in that conversation. So those two definitely come to my mind. And then, Okudah and Henderson haven't really worked out. Who else? Greedy. Is Greedy his third year? I forget. No, Greedy's in his third year. Who else was in that? Bryce Hall for the Jets, maybe, would be the third there. I'm probably forgetting someone. Maybe someone in the chat can help me out. But I think Bryce Hall for the Jets might be my third. He's having a really solid year, as has the Bears from Utah. Jalen Johnson's been really good too. So maybe those four for second-year corners have all had really good year twos. And it makes sense. I mean, corner's a really tough position. A lot of guys just need another year. All right, from Nick, Patreon mailbag question. How do you think ownership affects the on-field football product? I ask because I live in Michigan and everyone blames the Lions' historical dumpster fire on the Ford family. So it's different for every organization. Some owners just pay the bills and are hands-off. Some live overseas. Some are Jerry Jones. Some are David Tepper, and they're very hands-on. I think Detroit, I can't say exactly how hands-on they are. I think they're relatively hands-on. It's so, like, you're asking me to solve the Detroit Lions. That's something people that get paid a lot more money than me haven't been able to answer for a long time. I think part of it might be that they aren't hiring the right people. I think the Matt Patricia hire specifically was, and that turn of events to fire Caldwell, who was doing a really good job. He had the Lions in the playoffs the first time in forever, first winning season in forever, was doing a really good job with a team that not a lot of people expected to be there. They fire him, they go to Matt Patricia, and the team just completely takes a step back. That whole turn of events, I think you can point fingers at the Ford family for setting back that organization because, Caldwell was viewed as a bit of a culture guy, a bit of a culture hire, and that worked. And then they're like, well, we're going to go to Matt Patricia, who's going to come in and just give us this elite defense because he's this genius schemer. No, it turns out he just works for Bill Belichick, and he's a fraud. And now they're back to square one of like, we got to get the culture guy in here. We got to reestablish everything. So recently, I think that was a really big mistake by the Ford family. But, I just think in general, they have a lack of winning culture, which is often overlooked. And that comes partially back to the Ford family, and that comes partially back to, like, it's just hard to dig out of that situation, especially when you're in Detroit. No offense to the good people of Michigan, but it's a little different than rebuilding the Miami Dolphins or the Atlanta Falcons or Houston Texans or whatever it is. It's just a little different when you're Detroit. But I think definitely some of those hiring decisions, the Ford family, it's fair to criticize them. From Connor Lee, mailbag question from Patreon. What are your thoughts on Mike Renner's statement that free agency is for need and the draft is for value? I feel like unless you need a QB or have an enormous hole at a position, that you should always draft the best player available on the board. And thank you. I will enjoy my wedding, Connor. Appreciate you. But I like to stay away. Like, I would say I disagree with that because I don't think you should pigeonhole yourself into a philosophy like that. I think there's going to be years where you should draft for need. Case in point, the Chargers this year. Case in point, the Bucks last year. Like, I think there's a lot of situations where as long as the talent is pretty good, like as long as you're not reaching for, as long as you're not reaching for a need, then it's a good process. Now, if you get into like seriously reaching for need, like reaching for a Daniel Jones, for example, that's when I would say, yeah, don't do that. But as long as, like, if you're sitting there, let's just imagine, I know this isn't exactly how it played out, but let's imagine you're the Chargers this year. They picked 12th, it did play out this way, right? The Chargers could have drafted Micah Parsons. Chargers could have drafted Micah Parsons, right? But they took Slater instead. Parsons might be the better player, the better prospect, but I think you draft for need as long as it's fitting. But I've always said, people ask, do you draft raw prospects? Do you draft guys that can win now or play at a high level now? Or do you, draft for need, draft for value, that kind of stuff? I never want to pigeonhole myself into a certain philosophy. I think it's very fluid, and you have to take every situation, every team differently. And I think that very much applies to free agency as well. I think there's going to be situations where I think filling needs, or that's what he said. He says filling needs in free agency is what you're supposed to do. But I think you can find value in free agency as well. The Bucs picked up Shaq Barrett on a value contract. I think there's value to be found in free agency as well. So I would just say I don't think Renner's that far off, but I wouldn't make that statement myself. I just think you got to be very fluid with anything like that. And chat saying Parsons was taken right before the Chargers. So thank you guys, but just you get the thought process there. From Jagonathan, how has Joe Barry changed the defense of Green Bay? Looks like they start with a cover 2 shell, but seem to rotate into cover 3, 4, 6 post snap. Yes. So Joe Barry is from the Vic Fangio tree, which means exactly what you just described. Showing 2 shell and then turning that into a bunch of disguised hybrid-looking coverages. That's the core principle of the Vic Fangio defense, and that's exactly what they've done. And it's led to Amos and Savage. Now that they're really comfortable with the scheme, they look incredible back there. Both those guys can come up and down. They can run, a split high 2 zone. They can go quarters. They can come down in a cover 3 buzz because you show 2 high and then you rotate. One's in a buzz, one's in a deep middle third. It's a beautiful system when you can get. I would say in those systems, oftentimes the safety is actually more important than the corner, believe it or not. And I think you're seeing that. Rasul Douglas, Kevin King are actually doing okay in those systems because their assignments aren't that complicated, especially when you run all those quarters coverages. They're complicated mentally, but they're not physically demanding. You're not being asked to carry a deep cross like Mike Pettin's scheme, where they ran a lot of man and zone match, which is a very demanding skill set. That's why Jair Alexander was so good at it, because he's so physically talented, but Kevin King was so effing bad because he can't run with basically any receiver in the NFL for more than 2 yards. But in a zone-heavy system, he can kind of use his length and his football IQ a little bit more. We just got a super chat question from May Take Your Hat, Sir. If Dak wasn't the obvious winner, how would you feel about Robert Alford for comeback player of the year? He's just not a good enough player to win it. I agree he's having a great comeback year, but you got Joe Burrow, you've got Derwin James, there's other people. I can't go that far with Robert Alford because he's not, it's impressive that he's out there. He's reestablished himself as a good number 2 corner. The Cards are thrilled to be able to be getting something from him, but you can mention him, but he's not a serious contender for a comeback player of the year, in my opinion, no. All right, we got 3 more Patreon questions here. And we also just got a mailbag question from the one and only TFGF. So, from my future wife, how do you see the season ending for the Vikings, and would you recommend betting on them or against them? Oh boy. So, she has seen this firsthand over the last 5 or 6 days. Last weekend, we had the picks were public here on YouTube. So we had a teaser. We needed the Cowboys to win, we needed the Cardinals win, and we needed the Vikings to win. And the Vikings went and lost to Detroit on a last-second play. The Detroit Lions, giving them their first win of the season. So I'm already mad at the Vikings. Then I picked the Steelers to cover the spread against the Vikings. And the Steelers forget how to play defense for 3 quarters of football. Yeah, we're just a little bit mad at the Minnesota Vikings in this household right now for the last 6 days or so. But as far as how I see their season ending, I think it'll continue to be up and down. I think they sneak in as the 7 seed in the NFC, and then they get just their shit trounced by the Bucs or the Packers or the Cardinals or the Rams or whoever it ends up being with that 2 seed. I don't see them hanging in a playoff game. They are feisty, and maybe I'm just saying that because I'm mad at them, but I guess if I want to be very realistic, they are a team that on a good day can hang with a lot of good teams. So I will give the Vikings some credit. Big win against the Vikes. Their season's alive, but yeah, we're just a little bit cranky when it comes to the Vikings right now. Scott Nance, where would I rank Max Crosby? And also, do you think I will start to dive? When do I think I'll start to dive into the draft? Well, as I said at the start of the show, we're going to have mock draft coming out in like 10 days. Let's see, the Monday after this next Monday will be the mock draft. So that'll basically be the start of draft season. I can't wait. Just already starting to watch some prospects and make that transfer over. I think it's my favorite time of the year as far as making content for the channel. It's just so fun to learn about all the new players and share what I'm seeing. But where would I rank Max Crosby? I think as he sits here right now, somewhere in the top 10 for edge rushers. I wouldn't put him ahead of either of the Watts. Sorry, let's take J.J. Watt out of the picture for now because when healthy, he's about as, I don't know. J.J. Watt's just weird. But he's not better than T.J. Watt. He's not better than either of the Boses. He's not better than Garrett. I'd still take Khalil Mack over him. And then I think you can start to converse about Max Crosby. I think Brian Burns is, pretty close. They're both pretty close. Zadarius Smith, we'll see if he can come back healthy. He's kind of in that mix. I'm probably forgetting people as well. Danielle Hunter, another kind of complicated injury issue there. But I think Max Crosby, seriously, is in kind of the 7 to 12 ballpark right now. Again, complicated because a lot of these guys have weird injuries right now. Danielle Hunter, Zadarius Smith, and J.J. Watt are all guys I would probably say when healthy are better than Crosby, but they're all dealing with kind of nasty injuries. So I don't know exactly, but he's been incredible this season. A genuine defensive player of the year candidate. I've seen a couple tweets this week about who's defensive player of the year, and I did not see Max Crosby in there, and that is a shame because he's been that good. We've got a super chat question here from the Love Doctor 69 all day. Nice. How much would you say culture matters for teams that are improving? I ask because I think ZT and his culture have helped Cincy. Congrats on the marriage. Thank you. I appreciate the love and support. But yeah, man, I mean, culture doesn't get discussed enough. It's why I weight it so heavily in my deep dive series. I mean, it's the way I describe culture in my deep dive series very much applies to your question. It's your benefit of the doubt slider. When things go wrong, you got people to lean on. You got your next man up. You've got leaders that can elevate situations. There's just so many more answers to things when you have that championship culture. And I do think Zach Taylor, after I heard what Joe Burrow said about Zach Taylor, I can see that he, on an emotional level, really appeals to these guys. I think it shows through. They play, I haven't seen the Bengals be such a tough confident team before. Now, they've had some ups and downs for sure. They've laid stinkers. But I think you can give some credit to Zach Taylor. I'm not like fully convinced yet that it's not just he's got a good team, he's got a good quarterback, he's got good players, they're winning. Winning cures all wounds. I'm not entirely sure that it's not just that, but I think there's something to be said about the players like Zach Taylor, for what it's worth. I'll just say that. Okay, from Jack. What does a realistic trade package for Rodgers look like, and who would cough it up? I think like it starts with a first round pick. He'll be 39. I've seen people say 2 firsts. I think that if there's a legitimate market for him and he's willing to go to multiple teams, you could see multiple firsts. If he's like, I'll play for Denver, I'll play for the Raiders, I'll play for the Steelers, let's say, or if he only says 3 or 4 teams and only 2 of those teams are in, I don't know if the market gets hot enough that they get 2 firsts. But I do think it starts with a first round pick, and then you're maybe getting a future second, or you're getting a receiver back or something like that. So, let's say it's Denver. I think first round pick, future second, and KJ Hamler could be maybe what the trade looks like. Or first, a third, and a Quagbunam, or something in that ballpark might be a realistic trade package for Rodgers. Okay, this is my last Patreon question, unless some have come in during the show here, which I wouldn't be surprised. Hold on. Oh, yeah. We got 5 more from the live folk on Patreon. All right, from William. If you could pick one team to relocate based off of feeling that they simply need a change of scenery to work, which team would it be? I mean, Houston's the obvious one in my mind. I think that team has lost the Houston Texans. And I've never been to Houston, so I don't know for sure. But I can imagine there's a lot of Cowboys fans in Houston already. And then when that team, they were an expansion team in like 2000. They've never won a Super Bowl. They've never really gotten close. What do they have? 1 playoff win? And then they go through this ownership, the Deshaun Watson situation. I can't imagine a team that is even close to where Houston is as far as let's just get out of here, or let's sell this NFL. Let's sell this NFL spot to someone else for $2 billion. We'll pay off all of our players' contracts, or they can go to the new expansion team or whatever it is, and they can reset this thing, because I think that's got to be the answer to your question. All the players would just play for the new team, by the way. Ignore what I said about buying off their contracts. That's not really a thing, as far as I know, at least. Okay, we got another question from Loomer. This one's on Patreon. Who's your AFC playoff projections by seed? I am going to dodge your question for a couple of reasons. Well, I guess playoff projections I can do. That's not playoff predictions. A little different. The reason I was going to dodge it is in that mock draft, because I'm going to be recording it tomorrow and releasing it after 2 more weekends of NFL football. What I did was, predicted out the rest of the season and then got a new draft order, because it's going to change every week anyway. So in that mock draft, you'll see a little bit of my season predictions inside of it, but that's 10 days out. I might as well answer you here an hour into the podcast. Those still sticking around deserve to hear. So based off my memory from that mock draft, I had the Chiefs getting the 1 seed, Patriots with the 2 seed. It would have been the I had the Bengals winning the East, but getting the 4 seed, I think, which leaves, I think I had the Titans actually getting the 3 seed because their schedule is really easy, which is huge for the Titans. If they can get healthy and get that 3 seed, they're right in the mix. They could be a really scary playoff team. But then the 5 seed, I think, was the Bills. I think it was Bills, then Ravens, then Chargers 7, I think is what it went. No, Colts. It was actually Colts with the 5 seed, Ravens with the 6 seed, and Bills with the 7 seed. Bills' schedule is not easy. They got to play the Cards, the Patriots, maybe someone else in there. So just to repeat that, for the wild cards, it was Colts with the 5 seed, it was Ravens with the 6 seed, and Bills with the 7 seed. From Micah, what is one quarterback scheme pairing that you wish could exist, or maybe a coach you want to see them work with? Let's see. Trying to think of like a quarterback that's maybe struggling this year to be the quarterback I pick here. You know, it's funny, I would have said Russell in a Shanahan system, but we got that, and it's not really working. You know, it's not exciting, but this is what just came to my mind. I want to see Jimmy Garoppolo back in a quick-hitting spread coast offense. Say Pittsburgh. Like, just plug Jimmy back in Pittsburgh. Not that it would be like, oh my God, this is the most exciting, amazing thing I've ever watched, but I think he would fit really well, and they could win a lot of football games with Jimmy there. And he could have a nice resurgence in a new system with, you know, great receivers for what he does. Because I've talked about this before, but the Shanahan offense, they want accuracy down the field. Shanahan schemes up the mental side of the things for these quarterbacks anyway. And that's part of Jimmy's game, is he actually can read defenses pretty quick. So I don't think his skill sets are best utilized in San Francisco. Again, I don't think he'd be amazing, but I think he'd be a really good fit. All right, from Tarver. Has Patrick Mahomes played like a top 5 quarterback this year? I still am going to say yes, because not a lot of guys have really captured that title. You know, Rodgers and Brady have really been the 2 guys that have been, let's just say, top 5 quarterbacks from start to finish. Kyler has, but he's been injured. And then who else? Watson's in court. Russell Wilson's been injured and playing like crap. Josh Allen hasn't been a top 5 guy. You know, Herbert and Burrow are maybe in that mix. I think Lamar has played himself out of that conversation in the last month. So you're kind of left with Patrick Mahomes. So yeah, I would say yes. From Brandon, where does Michael Pittman rank for me among NFL receivers right now? Not as high as Colts fans probably would want me to say. You know, I think he's like right next to Mike Williams. So where does Mike Williams rank? Like in the 30s? There's a ridiculous amount of solid NFL receivers, and I think Michael Pittman is one of those guys. I think you'd be surprised going down a list at how many guys you'd rather have than Michael Pittman, especially for me, who I'm always going to prefer separators. You know, I think there's 4 other better receivers in that division alone. Brandon Cooks, DJ Chark, Julio Jones, and A.J. Brown, for example. Okay, I think this is going to be our last question unless we get any more super chats. But from Josh, What do I think of the idiotic rumor that the Broncos want Dan Quinn as their head coach? Oh my God. Just keep Vic Fangio. Like, what's the freaking... I'm gonna hope that George Payton, the new GM there, is smarter than that. But that is, like, literally just keep Vic Fangio at that point. Vic Fangio is a better defensive mind than Dan Quinn. Dan Quinn has shown that he's not a good head coach. He's a good defensive coordinator. But dumb. I'm gonna choose to believe that that's not true. And I think that's all we got, guys. That was a fun stream. I am gonna go get to work on the mock draft stuff. That again is gonna be dropping in like 10 days from the recording of this, but. Fun little mailbag podcast. Thank you guys so much for your questions. You guys make this show go around. Check out my Patreon if you want to be able to submit questions every week. And also check out SeatGeek, where I buy all of my tickets. You get the best prices, the best seats. It's the best user interface. If you're going to games, do it through SeatGeek. I promise you, you won't regret it. And one last little super chat here. Don't want them to go to waste. Which position would you say you're best evaluating in the draft? I would say my hit rate with wide receiver and edge rushers is where I have had my most success. I think those stand out a little bit more than other positions. So I'm going to go with wide receiver and edge rush. And there we go. That's the podcast. Appreciate everybody. You can watch this whole thing back on YouTube. And it will also be uploaded here shortly to the audio version on Spotify. Just search Fully Inflated Football Podcast. Leave a review if you do. I'm done rambling. Let's get out of here. Goodbye.